Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed Al Sharif. I'm an assistant lecturer in surgery department, head and neck unit. Our talk today is about head and neck radiology. We will have some CT scans and X-rays and radioisotope studies. Starting with the CT scan, in any radiology, when we have to give some details about this radiology, you have to mention the type of the imaging, whether it is CT, it is an X-ray, radioisotope scan, what is the view of the study, and in which part of the body. You have to mention all these points. Starting with the CT scan, regarding the CT scan, it is not essential in all head and neck swellings. When we talk about the thyroid gland, for example, the most important radiology is ultrasound, and in some situations we can do CT scan for the patient. The CT gives images from 360 degrees to the patient. These images goes to a computer. The computer do reconstruction for these images to give you a view from all dimensions. You can adjust the view from your working station, whether this view is axial view or it is sagittal view or coronal view. While doing the CT scan, usually we do the CT scan with contrast. So the contrast can delineate the vessels, can delineate the mucosa of the structures like the esophagus, so we can easily demarcate and delineate the structures from each other. This contrast, before giving it, we have to ensure that the patient has good renal function, because it is nephrotoxic, and we have to take care because in some patient it can cause allergy and anaphylactic reaction. Starting with the CT scan, this is called a topogram or an X-ray scan to give you the level at which we are taking the cut. And this is the image of the CT, and this view is called axial view. And when you look at an axial view of a patient, in order to know which side is the right and left and anterior and posterior, you have to imagine that you are looking at this patient from downwards. You took the cut section and you are looking from downward, from his legs. Okay, the patient is lying down on the table of the CT scan and you are looking from his leg. So by default, this will be his right side, this will be his left side, this is anterior and this is posterior. Okay, so keep in your mind that white structures are usually bone due to the presence of calcium inside it, so they appear white like this, or maybe in some lesions you can see white structures, maybe these are calcifications. Very dark or black structures like this is usually air, and the soft tissue usually appear in a gray color with different degrees. So starting by this cut, you can see that this cut is at this level. So when we go from anterior to posterior, what are the structures here? We have a bony structure here anteriorly. This is the zygoma. Okay, and we have a structure air in this position. This is most probably, or this is actually the maxillary sinus. There is another air cavity behind the maxillary sinus, is the sphenoid sinus. And as you can see here, this is the skull, and inside the skull here is the brain. A cut at a lower level, we can see here anteriorly, there is a bony structure here, this one. This is the maxilla, okay? And as we go backward here, there is something like air here, right? and you can notice from here that this is just something like a tube, and this is its beginning. So this is the nasopharynx. Another air filled cavity backwards here at this side, this is the mastoid sinus. And finally we have air coming from inside to outside like a tube. At this level, this is the external auditory meatus. These are basic anatomy. You have to know the basic anatomy. You will not be asked, we don't want from you to know details about the pathologies and the sophisticated pathologies. No, you have only to know the basic structures and anatomy. At this cut, we have the cut here at a lower level, at the level of the mandible. So anteriorly here, this is the mandible, right? And at the mandible, we have muscles lying over the mandible and a glandular structure behind it. So very evident from this image that laterally on both sides we have the masseter muscles, yes, and behind the masseter muscles we have a gland here. This is the parotid glands, and as you can see, as we go downward, the skull becomes smaller in that, and this is its end. And at the next cuts, we will see backward the vertebrae, not the skull. This is a cut just below the mandible here. So from downwards, remember we are looking at the patient from downward. So again we see here, this is the tongue, okay? And this is two glandular structures just below the mandible. So they are the submandibular salivary glands. And backward, as we go backward here at this level, we have two structures here. They are running laterally in the neck from upward downwards. What are these structures? These are the sternomastoid muscles, okay? And this is subcutaneous fat, not a big deal. We have here these circles. You know what are these circles? These are the carotid sheaths. The carotid sheaths, they appear because the patient is taking a contrast, a dye here, they have an enhancement, okay? So in the carotid sheaths we have the common carotid artery, the internal jugular vein, and the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve usually doesn't appear because the CT scan doesn't show nerves. If you want to do an imaging study to see a nerve, you have to do MRI. So here we have the most lateral structure is the internal jugular vein. And because we are at a high level, so the common carotid artery is bifurcated into internal carotid and external carotid. So these three structures are internal jugular vein and internal carotid and external carotid arteries. At a lower level in the neck, we start to see anteriorly here a bony structure, right? What is the next bone below the mandible here? Between the mandible and the thyroid cartilage, we have the hyoid bone. So this is the hyoid bone, and these are the attachment of the muscles attached to the hyoid bone. Again, backward, we can see here, okay, the vallecula, this is not important, the piriform sinus, we can skip this. We can see here, again, this is the carotid sheath. The most lateral structure in the carotid sheath is the internal jugular vein, and medially we have the common carotid arteries, and this is the sternomastoid muscle. As we said, the sternomastoid muscle is covering the carotid sheath all over the way from up down, from the base of the skull till the level of the clavicle. Okay, and if you take a look here, you can find a vessel overlying the sternomastoid. This is most probably the external jugular vein, and this is the vertebrae. At a lower level than the hyoid bone, we start to see a V-shaped notch here. This is the thyroid cartilage. So we are at the level of the thyroid cartilage or at the level of the larynx. And again, this is the sternomastoid muscles, and this is the internal jugular vein and common carotid arteries. So this is the thyroid cartilage. Inside the thyroid cartilage, we can see the vocal cords. Very important, the vocal cords, because if you are dealing with a patient with goiter and you are having a problem in the vocal cords, you have to suspect that there is a malignancy in the thyroid infiltrating or affecting the recurrent laryngeal nerve. And in these situations, we don't depend on the CT to assess the vocal cords. For assessment of the vocal cords, we do laryngoscopy. Okay? And again, this is the sternomastoid muscles, internal jugular vein, and common carotid. Once you see the the thyroid cartilage, you have to keep in your mind that there may be a thyroid gland here. Why? Because the extension of the thyroid gland is from the oblique line of the thyroid cartilage above to the level of C6 below. Okay, so this is the thyroid cartilage, so I am expecting to see a thyroid gland at any cut. This is at a lower level of the thyroid gland, again, of the thyroid cartilage. Again, we can see here, this is the thyroid cartilage, and this is the cricoid cartilage. So we have the larynx here, the thyroid cartilage and the cricoid cartilage. This is the sternomastoid muscles on both sides, and this is the internal jugular vein and common carotid artery. As you can see here, as we go from above downward, the sternomastoid was very lateral at the higher cuts, and now it is more anteriorly, okay, and covering the carotid sheath all the way down. As I told you, once you see the thyroid cartilage, you have to search for the thyroid gland. So here, if you take a deep look at this image, you can see this is the thyroid cartilage, and this is the sternomastoid and the carotid sheath. Where should be the location of the thyroid gland? Because from the anatomy, the lateral boundaries of the thyroid gland is the carotid sheath, and it can be insinuated between the carotid sheath and the thyroid cartilage. So this is part of the thyroid gland. Maybe this is the upper lobe of the right lobe of the thyroid gland. As we go downward at the level, below the level of the thyroid cartilage, we can see this classical cut or image. We have two tubes here. This cut is at the level of lower neck. So these are the clavicles here. These are the clavicles. And we have two tubes here. Two tubes filled with air, because this is black. So this is a trachea, and behind the trachea we have the esophagus. Overriding or overlying the trachea here is the thyroid gland. So this is the right lobe of the thyroid gland, and this is the left lobe, and this is the isthmus. Laterally on both sides of the thyroid gland, we have the carotid sheath, the internal jugular vein, and the common carotid arteries. This is a very classical view, and a view that can show you the anatomy and the structures surrounding the thyroid gland. This is the thyroid gland, trachea. Behind the trachea is the esophagus. This is fat. So if you have an image like this, what would be your comments? As I told you, you have to comment on the type of the study. This is a CT scan, right? Where? At the level of the neck, lower neck actually, because these are the clavicles. What is the view? This is an axial view. Okay, what we can see here, that this is the trachea, and this is the thyroid gland over the trachea, and there is an evident enlargement of the left thyroid lobe, pushing or displacing the trachea to the right side and causing backward displacement of the carotid sheath backward, posteriorly. okay, because this is a big, maybe a big nodule or a large left thyroid nodule or loop. Inside the thyroid gland we can see white structures here. This may be calcifications inside the thyroid gland. So we can comment here that this is a CT scan with contrast axial view neck at the level of the clavicles, showing left-sided thyroid nodule displacing the trachea to the right side and causing backward displacement of the carotid sheath. And actually these are both these plaque structures. Here is the apex of the lung. So actually from this image we don't have a lot of data except that this is a big nodule displacing the trachea to the right side. Do we have data about this nodule? Its maybe size, its echogenicity, hypoechoic or hyperechoic or isoechoic, its vascularity, its outlines, its peripheral halo? No, this data is not present. They are not present here. So this is why the CT scan is not an important imaging in the thyroid gland. In the thyroid gland, the most important imaging is the ultrasound. We do CT in some cases of goiter, like malignancy, to maybe to see if there is any infiltrations of the surrounding structure, to see the lymph nodes, okay, to see if there is any distant metastasis. We can do CT scan or for cases of retrosternal goiter to know the level of the retrosternal extension. Some cases of recurrent goiter we can do CT scans, but most of the cases of simple multinodular goiter, which are the most common types of goiter, we don't do CT scans. Okay, this is the same study but with a different view. This view is called coronal view. Coronal view, you are looking at the patient from front of the patient anteriorly, and you take the cut and looking at the patient from anteriorly. So here we can see this is the trachea and this is a left thyroid gland or nodule displacing the trachea to the right side. And very important that we can see, okay, it is displaced but it is still patent and the airway is patent. There is no problem in the airway. Again, this is a CT scan, axial view at the level of the neck, showing what? Showing diffusely enlarged thyroid gland. There is a diffuse enlargement of the thyroid gland. This is not a nodular enlargement. We can see diffuse enlargement in cases of physiological goiter, Graves' disease, and in cases of Hashimoto thyroiditis. All these goiters can cause diffuse enlargement of the thyroid gland without nodules. This is a CT scan axial view, but we are here at a high level. What is the level here? We are at the level of the mandible here and the nasal bone. These are the nasal bone and this is the mandibular condyles. Okay, and as I told you in the previous studies, once you see the mandible, you have to see a muscle lying on the mandible and a gland. The muscle is the masseter muscle and the gland is the parotid gland. And from this image it is clear that the left parotid gland is enlarged, so there may be a tumor in the left parotid gland. So this is a CT scan axial view, head showing well-defined mass in the left parotid gland. Most probably this is a parotid tumor, and we know that the parotid gland is a gland of tumors. 80% of the salivary gland tumors affect the parotid gland. 80% of them are benign, 80% of the benign are pleomorphic adenomas, and 80% of the pleomorphic adenomas affect the superficial lobe of the thyroid of the parotid gland. Again, when we go back to the lower neck, this is a CT scan of the lower neck. Why we say lower neck? Because this is the trachea and this is the apex of the lung appear here. and this is the thyroid gland overlying the trachea, the carotid sheath again laterally on both sides, and we have a swelling here in front of the thyroid gland. From one image I can't give a certain diagnosis, but what I can say is there is differential diagnosis. So this may be a midline neck swelling, anterior midline neck swelling for differential diagnosis. Maybe this is arising from the thyroid gland, maybe a thyroglossal cyst, maybe a lymph node, because the lymph node is the most common neck swelling, and if this is a lymph node, it will be pretracheal lymph node, which is level 6 lymph nodes. Again, this is a CT scan axial view at the level of the thyroid cartilage. This is the thyroid cartilage, and we can see this is the sternomastoid muscle and the carotid sheath deep to the sternomastoid muscles. What is the finding here? We can see that on the right side there is a lesion or a swelling here. So this is a lateral neck swelling because it's not in the midline. This is a lateral neck swelling. And when we say lateral neck swelling, we have to mention whether it is in the anterior triangle or in the posterior triangle. How can I tell? From its relation to the sternomastoid. The swelling here is posterior to the sternomastoid because this is anterior and this is posterior. So the swelling is the posterior to the sternomastoid, so it is in the posterior triangle in the neck. We have differential diagnosis of swelling in the posterior triangle of the neck. What are these differential diagnosis? The most common neck swelling is the cervical lymph nodes. So maybe this is a cervical lymphadenopathy, maybe cystic hygroma, maybe pharyngeal pouch, maybe nematocele, subclavian artery aneurysm. All these are differential diagnoses, but all of them don't have the same structure. The pharyngeal pouch, the nematocele have different structures or different appearance from this. So most probably this is a lymph node, okay? And if this is a lymph node, it will be level 5 lymph node, because any lymph node in the posterior triangle is level 5 lymph nodes. This is a CT scan, but the view here is different. We are looking at the patient from his side, from the lateral view, and this is called sagittal view. So this is a CT scan of the head and the neck. What is the view? Sagittal view, and of course it is with contrast because the vessels are very evident here, taking a good enhancement. This is the common carotid artery, the internal carotid artery going to the brain, and the external carotid artery. And at the bifurcation of the common carotid, there is a lesion here, a structure here, causing splaying of the internal and external carotid apart from each other. So most probably this is a carotid body tumor, and this CT is called CT angiogram. So this is a CT angiogram or arteriogram of the carotid vessels, sagittal view, showing an enhancing lesion situated between the internal and external carotid arteries, splaying them apart from each other. This is carotid body tumor. And CT angiogram or arteriogram or angiography, this is a CT with contrast, but the study is mainly dedicated to view the vessels, and we choose the timing of taking the images where the concentration of the dye is the highest level at the carotid. So the carotid can be very clear like this, and we can see the tumor between the two terminal branches. And this is image, the CT angiography or CT angiogram, and this view is the diagnostic imaging study for the carotid body tumor. I can't diagnose a carotid body tumor without an image like this. So here we have finished the CTs. We have some X-rays. This is an X-ray. Again, we have to mention the type of the study, X-ray. Which part of the body? This is chest and lower neck. What is the view? Posterior anterior view. We can see here, maybe not very clear, that this is the trachea. We have a shadow here of the trachea, and we have an evident shadow for a lesion, soft tissue shadow in the lower neck and the superior mediastinum, deviating the trachea to the opposite side. Most probably this is a retrosternal goiter. So this is an X-ray, posterior anterior view, chest, neck, soft tissue mass in the neck and superior mediastinum with significant narrowing and deviation of the trachea to the left side, most probably retrosternal goiter. This is another X-ray. This is maybe more clear. X-ray, chest, posterior anterior view, neck and chest, showing again deviation of the trachea to the right side with a soft tissue shadow lesion in the neck and superior mediastinum. Most probably this is a retrosternal goiter. Clinically, we suspect that this is a retrosternal goiter when we find some signs. What are these signs? That there is dilated neck veins on examination, on inspection. There is plunging lower border. I can't feel the lower border while palpating the thyroid gland. On percussion, there will be dullness on percussion on the sternum, and there is a test called Pemberton test. It will be positive, or Pemberton sign positive. When we find these signs clinically, I have to do this patient this X-ray to ensure this is a retrosternal extension or not. And in a lot of cases, or most of the cases, when you find this view, you have to do a CT scan to see in details or accurately the level of the retrosternal extension. This is an X-ray, head, neck. What is the view? This is a lateral view, and it is very clear here from this X-ray that there is a radio-opaque shadow here in the submandibular region. Most probably this is a submandibular gland stone, because the submandibular gland is known as a gland of stone, and the incidence of the stones is 30 times more than the parotid gland. This is already, we have a remaining two images. The both are radioisotope scan. This is a radioactive iodine scan of the thyroid gland, and the idea of this scan is that the thyroid gland loves the iodine or the iodine. Okay, so when you are having a toxic goiter and give the patient this iodine, it will be concentrated very rapidly in the thyroid gland because it loves it. So what if this thyroid gland is toxic? It is producing a lot of hormones, a very high levels of hormone, so it needs more iodine. So when you give this patient this radioactive iodine, it will be concentrated very rapidly in this toxic goiter. This is a normal view, by the way. Okay, there is no problem in this image. When you are having a toxic nodule, the nodule will concentrate the radioactive iodine, and this will be called hot nodule, and this is a toxic nodule. When there is no concentration or there is a low uptake of the iodine, this is called a cold nodule, and it is not toxic, and it is more probable to be a malignant nodule. We are not sure, this is not 100% that it is malignant, but we have a possibility that this is a malignant nodule. Our last scan here is again a radioisotope scan, but this scan is called Systemibi scan. The Systemibi scan is a localizing scan or a localizing study for the abnormal parathyroid glands. We know that there is a pathology in the parathyroid glands called hyperparathyroidism, whether it is primary, secondary, or tertiary. This study is used mainly for the primary type of hyperparathyroidism, because this is the type we want a localization. We want to know where is the abnormal parathyroid or the pathological parathyroid. In the other two types, in the secondary and the tertiary, we have hyperplasia of all the parathyroid glands, and when there is an indication for surgery in the secondary and tertiary, we usually attack the 4 parathyroid glands so we don't want a localizing study. But we want a localizing study to localize the site of the abnormal parathyroid gland in cases of primary hyperparathyroidism, because 85% of cases of primary hyperparathyroidism are usually due to a single adenoma in the parathyroid glands. So what is the idea behind this study? We have a protein called sestamine, and this protein was found that when you give it to the patient, it loves the parathyroid glands and it goes to the thyroid and the salivary gland. But they found that when there is a pathological parathyroid gland and abnormal parathyroid gland, this sestamine is concentrated at a higher levels at this parathyroid gland, and usually the washout is delayed. It retains this sestamine for a longer time. So in order to view this uptake and washout, they labeled this sestamine with a radioactive material. This radioactive material is the technetium-99. Okay, so this is a technetium-99 labeled sestamine isotope. We give the patient this technetium-99 labeled sestamine IV, and we take an image with the gamma camera after 15 minutes, because the gamma camera detects the radioactivity after 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, we will have an uptake with all the thyroid, the parathyroids, the submandibular, the parotid glands. Okay? Then, normally the thyroids and the normal parathyroid have a rapid washout for this isotope, and the abnormal or pathological parathyroid retains this isotope for a longer period of time. So after 3 hours of injection, we will see that the thyroid and the normal parathyroid have washed out of the isotope, and there is retention of the isotope in this parathyroid. So this is a left inferior parathyroid adenoma. Okay? In most of the cases, I have to do with this sestamine scan, a localizing study, we have to do another study. Usually it is ultrasound. It can suggest the site of the adenoma, and it can tell us whether there is thyroid nodules or not. Because if there is thyroid nodules, sometimes they are misleading in the sestamine scan, because they can uptake and can retain the sestamine for a longer period of time, and they can appear like the parathyroid adenoma. So if I'm having an ultrasound with the sestamine, I know whether there is nodules or not. So if you are not having a nodule and you have this lesion, this is a parathyroid adenoma. Okay? And the ultrasound, of course, if we are having a nodule, we have to investigate this nodule to see whether we have to do any action or any operation to the thyroid with the parathyroid in the same session. So finally, the sestamine scan, this is a localizing scan for the pathological or abnormal parathyroid glands. It is used as a localizing study in cases of primary hyperparathyroidism to localize the abnormal parathyroid glands. Okay, because in the primary hyperparathyroidism, the treatment is parathyroidectomy, focused parathyroidectomy. We go and only remove the abnormal parathyroid glands. So before going to the surgery, I have to know its position. While in cases of the secondary and the tertiary hyperparathyroidism, when there is an indication for surgery, we do something called neck exploration. We explore the 4 parathyroid glands, okay, and we remove 3.5 and keep half parathyroid gland. This is called subtotal parathyroidectomy, or we do total parathyroidectomy and implantation of half parathyroid gland in the brachioradialis muscle. Okay, this was our last slide, and thank you and good luck.